Hello everybody, hope you're doing well. Welcome back to CM Aviation. Today, we're going to be reacting to a video from yesterday's airlines. So he made a video titled NG Models Shift Away from the US. Is it real? And if so, why? So I watched about 30 seconds of this and I saw that he mentions my two videos, and we have certainly had discussions back and forth on model airline reform. So I think it's only fair to react to this video and see his perspectives. We've had quite the discussions about that, and I am genuinely curious as to his thoughts. This video is 23 minutes long, so definitely buckle up, as we're gonna have a bunch here to get into, and I'm certainly open to all and any perspectives. At the end of the day, we do not know exactly what NG's thinking. We're all here just to gain a better understanding, and I've made two videos on it now, and I appreciate the support from you all very much on those. But obviously there's been quite a subject here. There is also a couple comments at the end of this video that I'm going to talk about of people calling me annoying and so forth, and we're going to clarify those as well, because I'm just here to provide clarity, and at the end of the day I want to make a difference in our community, and I think it's important to address some of these subjects. With that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at this, everybody, and it's going to be fascinating for sure. So let's go ahead and watch this.
Hello and welcome to yesterday's airlines. Today's video is something very different.
And credit to yesterday's airlines for this video as well.
To be doing with my day, but it is a rebuttal, really, of a couple of videos that have been posted recently by Connor at CM Aviation. Connor's posted a couple of videos, and the topic has been entirely around NG models shift away from US releases, and he professes to be using the statistics,
which is true,
and just the statistics, to back up his assertions that there's been this big shift away from US models,
with my definitions, of course,
try and work out why that is. Now, I think that is a reasonably worthy aim if it indeed is at all true to begin with. And let me say that I've got nothing wrong with people talking about model airplanes, and I've got absolutely no problem with Connor, and I've got no problem.
Hey, and I also want to say I don't have any problem with Richard. I'm just here to gain a better understanding of what's going on. So Richard, I respect you for saying that, and I don't have a problem with you either. And I hope that we can have a civil discussion about what we're doing here. So I appreciate you saying that. That was very nice of you to say.
With him bagging on NG models, I have given NG...
I also am not here to bag on NG models, rather I'm providing my perspective. And if it was coming off as bagging, I apologize. That was not the intent.
A huge amount of stick in recent times. If you've been watching my ranking videos, you'll have seen that. And they have done a whole range of things which is infuriating.
Agreed.
Not just in terms of their releases,
Agreed.
but the way that they've rolled out the Wish Center, the way that they've done their CRP, the things that they've said and not translated well into English, and so on and so forth. There's a load of things that NG have done,
long list,
which have annoyed me. But if you're going to use statistics, I really do think that they need to tell the real story.
This may be the last ad you ever see, because with the free ad block extension from Capital
and our definitions are probably going to vary. I'll tell you that to begin.
I just don't think that Connor has done that with his videos because of the way he's used the data, and that's what I wanted to look at in this video.
Here's the data.
Look at the broader picture to put US releases in context and explain why there has been no shift away from US releases, at least until 2025, and why, obviously, there has been a shift in 2025 away from US releases.
I'm here to listen to his
perspective. Radical stuff. It is just a case of not cherry picking the data. So that's what we're going to do here in this video. Now I'm going to put the links to Connor's two videos in the description of this video.
And I'll put your link here as well,
and see what you think after you've watched this one. Now the slide.
And thank you for the mutual shout out, and Richard, I'll give you a mutual shout out too. Definitely check out this video here
you're looking at
for the details.
Taken directly from Connor's first video, and it basically shows NG's release output across their entire existence. And what I would take away from this is that NG year on year have been making more and more models.
Correct.
That has been reasonably broadly split across geographic regions, and it's not just...
I would say until 2024. Now the US numbers do look deceiving for 2024, but in the video, the second video particularly, we dove into the second half of the year, which was really the big takeaway from that video.
That they've been making more Asian models, they definitely have been, but year on year they've also been making lots more North American.
But I mean, let's look at all the, we'll talk about North America in a minute. Let's look at the rest of the world though. So Europe went from 64 to 45 and obviously has had minimal representation this year. South America, it went, you know, they had a little bit in 23, but barely any in 24, and the list goes on. And obviously Oceania's, you know, pretty low as well. So, but from North America, they're deceiving numbers, and we talked about that in the video.
American models.
But this is a long video, so we need to talk
here as well. And I don't think that this shows any real change in that behavior.
Without implying the definitions that I used in the second video.
And if we look at the statistics a little bit more closely, you can see that. So
these numbers are very deceiving. Personally, I think that they don't add up to the full picture, but if he would like to use them based upon the actual US releases, technically it's a fact that he's correct here in that the output has been strong for the US. That being said, the releases haven't been of desirability to US collectors because of all the duplicates.
So here we have a table of NG's releases.
So technically it's true, but this is a long video, so let's sit back and listen in.
And to my eye, the number of American releases has stayed pretty static.
Technically
as a
speaking, sure.
Of NG's release sets. Certainly, there has been quite a dramatic increase in number of American releases from 22 in 2018 up to 64 in 2024. So that's a significant jump, but that fits generally with the fact that total NG releases have gone up so dramatically in that period as well. But if you look at the percentages, ignoring 2018 when NG pretty much only had a 757 mold and a 787, and so you're going to get
been consistently 20%,
quite a high percentage of American
but they've been unique ones.
If you look from 2019 onwards, then the percentages have wavered between 21.97% up to a high of,
how about that bar graph of duplicate releases?
And they only really dipped heavily in 2023.
I'm sure we'll talk about it.
So just over 15%. I'm not quite sure what that did was, but by 2024 they were back up above 20%. So is this a shift away, or is this just a up and down by 1 or 2 percentage points year on year by NG models across that time period? I would say that as a percentage of NG's release sets in total, that US releases have actually stayed pretty static, and that a drop here and there of 1 or 2 percentage points really is nothing.
Your favorite movies and shows together. Because Disney Plus.
Now if we shift to a comparison of US releases with Asian releases, because one of the big complaints about NG models has been that they should be just called NB models, in the sense they only produce American and Chinese aircraft.
That part's
now Asia
pretty
is
true.
obviously an enormous market, much bigger than the United States, and NG Models is a Chinese company, so it's hardly surprising they're going to make a large number of Asian models, and you would expect there to be substantially more than Americans. It is certainly true, looking at this list here, that the number of Asian models has dramatically increased over the number of North American models, but it isn't really, as those percentage stats showed a minute ago, the US which has been suffering because of this. It is arguably other markets that have been suffering.
And that's why I talked about it in both videos for an extended period.
In Asian models,
especially the second,
in relation to the increase in their geographic area. It's also worth pointing out that until 2022, NG models made HYJL wings models for them, and HYJL produced quite a large number of releases per year, and they were almost all Chinese. So if you add those HYJL models to the NG release sets,
that's a good point. I appreciate you adding that.
2021, there's going to be a much higher percentage of Asian models that year than North America too. So adding that stat to this, I don't see any change whatsoever in the relationship of Asian to North American models. Again, I don't think there's anything to say here really, other than NG make more Asian models than they do American models. That isn't surprising or wrong in any way. And ironically, if you speak to Chinese collectors, it seems that they're pretty grumpy with what NG's been making as well.
It's a different collecting
demographic. It's not like they're really happy and they're getting tons and tons of models they really want. It simply isn't the case. It's very much feels like American exceptionalism to say that the percentage of American models has changed dramatically when it hasn't, or that NG isn't making enough American models, because when you compare it to other geographical areas.
Before we continue, to be very clear, The main purposes of the videos is the output of what the US releases are. It's not the actual statistical number. The data starts the foundation, and that bar chart in the second video really gets into that. And we'll see if the rest of this video gets into it. So just to be very clear, the intention of the videos was the usage, like the 6 Atlas 747s and the 4 American MD-80s, and the list goes on.
And it's pretty starkly obvious that the United States is very well served. Certainly, if you look at this table here from a European perspective, you're going to be pretty aggrieved by Americans complaining about the number of models they're getting.
And I can understand that, but also, you know, I made a point in the video for every region of the world, certainly Europe included.
Because European releases, although they were growing broadly
have
in line
tanked,
with,
and it's super unfortunate. And we may even make a video on
have
that.
not taken the same pathway that US or Asian releases have. They got up to 81 models in 2023 there,
and
but then look, in 2024 it's nosedive.
And it's really unfortunate. And that video definitely could be made too.
As many models. So to sit there and complain that America's being poorly treated.
The video was not a complaint, it was an analysis of the current situation.
When it had 79 in 2023, oh, and only got 76 in 2024. Seems a little bit rich, to be quite honest.
I also acknowledge in the video how fortunate US collectors are as well in the second video.
Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, which Connor doesn't mention once in that first video.
I will say that the first video could have had a little bit more clarity to it. I apologize for the lack of clarity, and it could have been better put together. The point was there, but the evidence was not as backed up as in the second video, so I will take the blame, and I did fix that in the second video.
At all. Especially galling when he talks very much about the change in releases from July 24 to July 25, as if there's no specific reason for that. The word is obviously tariffs and the dramatic impact that they have had. And it isn't a new impact. People seem to be looking at some really spurious dates as to when tariffs had an impact. Trump was elected in November and had talked about tariffs a lot. The first tariffs were announced in February, so it's not sensible to look at an April date. Now, I've been working with various manufacturers and they have been suffering since well before February, concerned about the impact of tariffs. So let's look at how this has impacted NG's releases with this timeline. You can see in the January release set that there were 9 North American releases out of a total of 42. As soon as February comes around, you're down to 2 out of 25. It's a much smaller set, and that is the first month where the first tariffs were announced. A 10% tariff on the 1st of February. Releases down heavily that month. In fact, the total number of releases were down by 17.
I also really want to note that the video talks about all the way back to July of 24. I know he might get to that, so I'm going to be patient, but I really want to note that because now we're starting January right here.
Now that could partly be to do with the Chinese New Year. It's always a little hard to tell. And the March set similarly was small, but by March tariffs had got up to 30%. And again, the release numbers are down. Now, again, that could be due to Chinese New Year.
Likely
so let's move on to April. April was insane. The tariffs went from 54%
understandable, and they still
to
had 6 models.
104% to 145% within a few days. That makes it impossible for a business to plan what it's doing. But you can see in the release set in that month that the number of Asian releases in relation to other releases increased dramatically. There were 26 Asian releases. There were still 6 North American releases, and there was barely anything from anywhere else. That strongly suggests to me that NG were saying, whoa, we need to focus on a market we are comfortable with, and
that's understandable. And that's what was talked about in the video.
Which are a risk, which is not just North America, but everywhere else too. Moving into May, another small set. But the Asia first strategy that had started in April clearly is continuing. There are 15 Asian models, 1 North American, nothing from anywhere else. And into June, again, you only get 3 North American models, but you're getting 20 from Asia and only 1 from anywhere else. So these stats...
I will say that the representation for the rest of the countries is really unfortunate. And I think we'd definitely be doing a video on that subject, Europe especially. But it's really unfortunate. I feel for all of you, whether you're from Europe, South America, Africa, or so forth. So that's a huge takeaway from this.
A dramatic shift away from North American releases. But the reason for that
is the tariffs for 2025. And if you want to start in February,
even though tariffs came down on the 12th of May to 30%, that is still 30%.
And it has a production, you know,
and
it's
have not been seeing 30% price rises in the United States
prolonged effect
at the moment.
It takes time
and
to
there's
get
a variety
back.
of reasons for that. But one of those is the companies are trying to loss lead. They're trying to suck up
it's
the
understandable
cost
for the last
in the vein
several
hope,
months.
probably,
Yes, that's
that
what
these
the video
tariffs will
talks
never be
about.
implemented,
Yes,
and things will go back to normal.
yeah.
I know there are various other workarounds that are being used, some less legal than others, but the reason you're not seeing enormous price rises at the moment is because everyone's still waiting to see what happens and hoping they can find a way out. I know this because I've been working directly with US distributors, and I've been talking to retailers, and I've been talking to other manufacturers, and I've been seeing what they're saying and what they're doing and what they're not doing. And
I want to find and kill the people who murdered my wife.
The Amateur is now streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney.
this
Hope the
pattern of
revenue's going
releases
the
from
right
NG models here, which dramatically decreases the
It's a good
amount of
video.
American
There's some good
material
points here.
in 400 scale at least, and we'll talk about why 200 scale may be different later on, I think is clearly related to the impact of tariffs. So
For 2025, yes, I won't say the same points I've made, but we still have half the video here. But so far, we haven't talked much about beginning in July of 24. And we talked about 2024, but it was deceiving because of the time frame of 2024.
So it completely bummed me out that Connor didn't mention tariffs once, because the only shift I'm seeing...
I failed to do so in the first video. I apologize. That script was written up all the way back at the beginning of May. And because of the prolonged effects beginning in July, that didn't initially click in my head that that needed to be made. And then the video was uploaded late. So there was a couple of problems that I had. I fixed it in the second video. So I do apologize. And I certainly fixed that in the second video.
Away from American releases is going to be entirely down to this tariff problem from what
Not for the last half of 2024, but we got to make it to the end of the video.
I am seeing here looking at the stats. This dramatic increase in Asian models because they can sell those tariff-free, and a move away from models from other geographic regions, not just the United States, because they're risky. Because everyone is being hit by tariffs. Everyone is hit by economic uncertainty. And that makes it very difficult if you're a business to plan, especially when you need to plan months and months and months ahead before the releases hit the stores. This is something which I probably should cover in more videos.
I agree. And Richard, I'm just going to give you this offer. If you want to collaborate on the other regions of the world, if you want to make a video together on the subject and talk about the problems, I would love to do that. So if you're interested, I absolutely would do that with you. I know that, you know, we may have some differing opinions, but I think bringing those opinions together to be able to talk about these subjects would be important for our community. So if you are interested in that, I am offering that to you at this time.
You've got to see kind of what happens over the coming months. But if there's a shift away from American releases in 2025, the only reason I can see is tariffs, and that has been ongoing now for at least 5 NG release announcements, not just a couple since. So moving on to Connor's second video, and once again he wants to talk about NG shift away. This time he's focusing primarily on rerun replicant releases, and again, he says that he's focusing on the data here, but he cherry picks it in a way that basically tells a story which is very US focused and also, you know, twisted, so it's not really true at all. So
if you want to define your definition as true towards that, fine, by all means be here to do so. But the reason that was defined that way, and I acknowledge it at the end of the video, was because that was the channel primarily focuses on US subjects. US collectors have not been pleased with the amount of duplicates, but we still have 10 minutes of this video, so we need to watch this.
Use these slides because quite helpfully he writes down what he's saying in the video, and we can talk about some of this. Now this first slide entertained me no end because he talks about there being a global dominance of releases as if this is a big issue. The United States
Should have said Asia.
still gets
That was the word.
1/4 of all the releases. The United States does not have 1/4 of the world's population. And although it does have roughly 1/4 of the world's total GDP,
There we go.
it is not representative of the globe. There are hundreds of other countries.
That's
there
a
are
fine
thousands
verdict to
of
have.
Other airlines.
I have no problem with that.
Of other people. I think that 1/4 of all releases being American is actually pretty damn good. And
yes, but then more information gets into it about the actual 1/4 and the duplicates and so forth.
There
We gotta
should
get there.
be,
Oops.
as he puts it, global dominance of other parts of the globe.
And that was talked about at the end.
The US makes up a relatively small percentage of the land area of the rest of the world. And of course, if you take into account the fact that it is the United States that is putting gigantic tariffs on other nations, then
I can't
he's
control
lucky
that, so
in that context that the US still makes up as high a percentage of releases as it does.
And I said we're fortunate at the end of the video.
Monday.
Tuesday,
And number 4.
Wednesday, Thursday,
Freakier Friday!
Okay, on to his second key takeaway slide. This one is also quite entertaining. So, US momentum collapsed after September 2024. Now, that is true.
Yes.
Models didn't release
Yes.
anything in October 2024.
That's right.
So, there are no models there. And what happened in November? Oh, yeah, it was the US election. And
If you
as
wanna
I've already
blame it on
pointed
that,
out,
sure, go right
if
ahead.
you're a major company producing lots of models that you have to plan months and months in advance and then send to another country which is threatening you, then surprisingly, that may change your behavior.
People were still buying at that
So,
time.
I think
model
that
airplanes are
the
high
installation
demand
of
for Black Friday and Christmas.
Trump in the new year and he's winning the election in November, yeah, definitely had a key impact. But again, he doesn't tie this to...
Why would you tie it when it's months done in advance and Black Friday and Christmas are coming up? No matter what happens, you think people are going to be buying. And it appears from all what I have seen throughout retailers and so forth that they had a very successful Black Friday and Christmas era there for 2024. So presumably you'd think you keep making subjects, especially if tariffs are a possibility beginning in the new year, January of 25 or February, whatever you want to say.
Tariffs at this point in the video at all. And as we've talked about in so far, you know, yes, there's been a dramatic drop of US models in 2025. Why is that?
I will say one area that I really failed to recognize, and I will take the fault for it, is certainly the anticipation leading up to what could happen. But why would you go off of what could when right now it's what will happen, right? So I think there's a relationship between could and would, and you have to balance those. And right then, NG could have speculated, and that could have been there. But once again, this dates back to July. So why would it why then? Why would it have not have, you know, happened there instead of what we ended up having?
Not because NG is shifting away from America for any other reason than tariffs, but he doesn't make that connection. Instead, he's just saying...
I probably could have did a better job on the
output is-
spectacle part, but once again, why not focus on will instead of would be my thought for NG. So that was my perspective on it. But there's some decent points here, or I would say good points. There's some good points as of to the speculation on NG's side. So maybe that's why. But once again, why would you do would instead of will, and could instead of can? You know, we're focused on now,
Yeah,
not
perhaps.
later.
But come on, connect the dots. Now, the third key takeaway here is duplicate releases. Now, this one is the primary chunk of the video.
Yeah, that's right.
And he's not wrong in the sense that
Yes, thank you.
NG models
I
makes a
appreciate
lot
that.
of duplicate
I
releases.
appreciate that.
And as
That's their strategy,
he
though.
explains, and I
Talk
can
about
explain, by duplicate releases, we're talking about re-regs, we're talking about small
Stickers.
changes to the livery, adding a sticker, that kind of thing. And also, NG has different packaging styles, or NG Lite as well. So you've got plenty of scope for duplication or releases that are very similar to each other. And he makes the completely accurate comment here that if you're looking at the American releases from July 24 to July 25, then there have been 54, and 56% of those are duplicate releases. So I'm not disagreeing with what he's saying there.
I appreciate
My problem,
that.
once again,
So what's the deal?
is that he looks at this entirely from a US perspective, as if somehow the US is being...
And there's a bunch of other places that have got duplicates over time. And Richard, if you'd like to collaborate on a video about this as well, getting back into the tie about the lack of European and other releases, we can also talk about the duplicate releases for the other regions of the world as well. I think that's a really important topic to talk about and so forth. But once again, at the end of the video, and we'll see if this comes up, but I acknowledge that it was very US heavy for the reason of there's so many US collectors. I mean, the video almost has 1,000 views and it's been out for 24 hours. There's obviously demand for people to see that video, and the reception reception's been good. It's got like 40 likes, so there's obviously people that are enjoying it.
Changed.
That's a good ratio. So.
And that simply isn't the case. There is no bias against America here by NG models in relation.
This is a good number. I appreciate you showing this, but excluding Asia, which is kind of an interesting market as it is, the US, as you're showing right here, is anywhere from 15 to 30% higher than the rest. Why? Can't answer that question.
Releases, which you can see really clearly if, again, you just look at the statistics.
Let's talk salary.
I appreciate you putting that chart together. That's a good chart.
Competitive.
And if it was a number, it would be
Broadly, globally, and not just in relation to the States. So I've taken these US stats here, and it gives you that 55.56% replicant or duplicate releases. But if you look across Asia, for example,
it's high on the others, but not nearly as high as
I went through the release set and did a count here. Then
it's a good point, though.
You've got 106 duplicates, which is a higher stat than the United States has. So in the first video, he was saying that NG's production had shifted away from the United States, and I don't think that the 1 or 2 percentage points, backs that up, except in relation to tariffs in 2025. And now we're moving on to, are they making American models, but they're all duplicates? And actually, when you compare to other geographical markets, it's exactly the same strategy that NG are using. It is obviously a lot cheaper to make 4 very similar American MD-80s than just to make one.
I don't disagree with that, but why would they not have started doing that in 2018, 2019?
Of each release, because they're almost certainly being made at the same time, and you just have to add on the little extra stickers. It's a perfectly sensible plan. It's one that other brands do as well, and it makes sense. But it is frustrating that NG do it at the same time.
Yes, and that's a video we could collaborate on, Richard. So if you want to make that video, let me know.
This is nothing to do with the United States. So it doesn't illustrate any shift in behavior.
I suppose that's a good point, Richard, and I appreciate that. And, it is important to acknowledge it from that perspective. The number I would like to see, and probably what I could put together for a third video, and we can do it together if you'd like, is I would like to see Asia's duplicate numbers dating back to 2020 all the way up till 2024, because I can tell you for sure the US duplicate number was not that high from 2020 until July of 2024. I can assure you that, especially 2020, 2021, 2022, those numbers are way lower. I also would like to see them from Europe as well and the rest of the world. It would be interesting to see those numbers, and I think we need to put those together and get a full scope on it. It's certainly annoying. I do appreciate the point that it's more than just the rest of the world. More than just the USA, and I think that's a good point. But, there's certainly quite a few angles we can take from this. So I appreciate the analysis here, Richard. I really do.
The US, it's exactly what they're doing everywhere. And again, if you're in Europe or looking at the rest of the world outside Asia and the United States, you've got probably more reason to be aggrieved here, because, even though your percentage of duplicates is down in Europe, it's only 35%,
complete output's really
you're only getting 40 models in the first place. So, again, the duplicate issue is an issue, but it's an issue for everyone. It's nothing to do with
I think that's a
the
fair
United
point,
States.
Richard. I really do.
Now, another point that's been raised in relation to US releases in 400 scale is the fact that NG have been increasing the production of 200 scale models, and there have been a decent number of US releases amongst those, even during 2025. Now, I don't know the exact reason behind this, but I could guess a couple of possible reasons why. One is that the 200 scale production may not run the same way that 400 does, and therefore you've had these models produced earlier, and therefore they've got the models existing and they have to get them out into the marketplace. That's a possibility.
Maybe.
It may not be the truth at all. And the second one is that I would guess that your average 200 scale collector is older and wealthier than your average 400 scale. Again, I don't have stats to back that up, but typically when I see 200 scale collectors, they're more mature and they're gonna have more income, and they're probably gonna be less heavily impacted by price increases associated with tariffs than younger collectors who don't have as much disposable income. Again, these are guesses. I don't know what the situation is.
These are fair assumptions.
But I don't think necessarily that comparing what they're doing in 200 scale and what's happening in 400 scale is relevant to this conversation. And I would much prefer
be a long
to
discussion
compare to what other 400 scale brands are doing in the marketplace.
It's interesting for sure. We could have a long talk on relevancy, but
this may be the last ad you ever see.
That wasn't the last time.
Because with the free ad block extension from...
Okay, well, that's what I think the statistics are saying about NG models.
I think he got
and
some fair
the
perspective,
US
Richard. I don't agree with
market.
all of them, but I think he has some fair
I
ones.
really don't agree that there has been a shift away from United States
fine.
models, except in relation
25, sure.
to the impact of
I certainly think that there has been a shift in desirable US releases non-duplicated, and that was kind of the big point in the video. But from the perspective of what you're using here, maybe so.
tariffs. And I hope that the stats I've shown you illustrate that. The reality is that the percentage of American releases over time has not gone down dramatically. If anything, it stayed roughly level until 2025 when the tariffs hit. Now, if you look at the second aspect of this, the duplicate releases, and whether that has dramatically impacted what has been being produced for the United States, there's an impact, but
Yes.
it's no greater or different than the impact in the rest of the globe.
I think
And
that's a fair
there are just
point.
as many duplicate releases being
I think
made.
there's some big part of that and some not, but at the end of the day, you know, it's interesting to think about the new releases that are coming out for Asia. When you have 100 of them, then or 70 or whatever the number was, and that's really high. I do agree, and I made the point very clear in the video, which hasn't came up yet, so I'm going to let this video finish. But we also didn't talk about my segment where I talk about the rest of the world.
Or other regions as there are for the United States. Now, I appreciate what Connor is trying to do with his videos and the analysis he's trying to make.
I appreciate what you're trying to do
but I
too.
do find it a little bit galling as a non-American how exceptional a lot of Americans consider themselves to be, and
We'll talk about that in a
how
moment.
they view the world very much through this very US focused
You still have not talked about the segment where I talked about the rest of the world, Richard.
lens. I think that you need to look at the whole market if you want to.
I talked about a good portion of the whole market. I didn't use statistics because it wasn't exactly on the subject of that video I talked about, but I did talk about the rest of the world. And if you'd like to make a video on the whole world, I think we should. I think it would be a very important subject, and I mentioned that as a possibility at the end of that video.
I understand what manufacturers are doing and why they're doing it, and you certainly cannot ignore the macroeconomic climate and the political
For
decisions that have been
2025,
made
sure.
that
But
are
back to July of 2024.
driving a lot of that decision making are amongst manufacturers in pretty much every area of business. So that is my view on this. If there's a move away from the United States, it is entirely down to tariffs. Otherwise, NG's behavior has been pretty much standard and hasn't really...
Not compared to the rest before July of 2024 when they weren't making US duplicates. And I'm going to get a screen recording here of Model Airline Forum for you all here in a moment.
In relation to the
I'll get that
States.
ready. So
If
I'll show
anything,
you all.
it is European collectives who've got far more right to complain about what
Yeah,
NG
and I'm not here
has
to
been
complain.
doing.
I'm giving an analysis, right?
And the big markers for me in NG's behavior are the massive increase in Asian releases and the decrease in European releases, not necessarily what has been going on with the US. Okay, well that's it for this rather unusual video.
Let's see here.
I hope that people don't think that I'm trying to bully Connor here. I'm really just
I
trying
appreciate
to
that.
give
I'm
a
not
different
here
point of
to
view and
bully
use the
either.
statistics in the way that I think they should be used to tell
I think there was some good
story
points
as
that I could
see
have
that in
acknowledged a little bit
reality.
better here. I will agree with that.
And that is all I'm trying to achieve here. So anyway, that's it for this vid. I'll see you next time at Yesterday's Airline. Goodbye for now.
All right. What we're going to do is I'm going to talk about the video. I really think that Richard made some valuable points, and I appreciate them making those, but I also think that there was a couple of pieces there that were missing, and I understand when you're making a big video like this, it's easy. I'll even give it a like. There's a couple pieces here that weren't acknowledged. I know when you're making a big video like this, it's easy for some of those to go under the radar, but we need to talk about this. First off, we are going to talk about some of these comments here. So I appreciate the comment here from Stars10P Aviation. And yes, the rest of the world's a big point. I think that video is definitely needs to be put together, so that's for sure. And certainly some interesting videos here, or interesting comments, sorry. I want to take this comment from Generic Gamer of Nowhere. And I don't have any problem with this person, but just want to read this off. Connor is such an annoying creator, lol. He sees stuff as only Americans collect model aircrafts or model planes, and there's not a big market in China, and he thinks don't exist because they don't have YouTubers. The last portion of the video generic gamers of nowhere, I talked about the entire world for a long portion. I mentioned that I would like to make a video on the entire global perspective. I also in that video talk about the thought process of why the video was made for the US, because a big portion of my viewership is from the US, 90%. So obviously it makes sense to talk about this from a US perspective. So I don't know why you think I would be annoying for doing what my audience wants to see, but I certainly think that that's a very interesting word to use when I spend the last portion of the video, like over 5 minutes, whatever it was, I think it was like at least 3 or 4 minutes, talking about the rest of the world. So interesting comment. And then we have one more comment here. If Connor is American, it is really surprising that he's crying fault and skewing the numbers to make it look like they're getting targeted unfairly. Crying foul and skewing, that's not what we're doing. We're using it from the US perspective to ask the question of why we're getting all these duplicates. I simply don't understand why those words are being used there. I'm certainly not complaining, and I even said in the video that I was fortunate, so I don't know where that comment is coming from. Also, if he's American, of course he's not mentioning tariffs, as most Americans don't grasp how they work. I did mention the tariffs in the second video, and I apologize for the lack of acknowledgement in the first video. Again, that script was typed up in May. It's my fault for not making disclaimers about that, and I simply could have did a better job with it. So I do apologize for the lack of thought process there. And these are some of my first times making videos like this, right? So I hope you're willing to understand that, but also the words that you're using, I mean, certainly right there. Richard says, I don't think it's on purpose, but he really does seem to be everything through a US lens only. So everybody, I would recommend that you go watch this second video, and if you haven't already, and definitely check out the last portion of it, because I talk about more than a US perspective. And Richard, if you'd like to do a collaboration, we can, but regardless, I will 100% now be making an NG video on the global perspective, because it's important to see it from a global perspective, and I really would like to talk about Europe and some of these other places that are getting underrepresentation. So we're going to be talking about it from a US perspective. We're going to be talking about the duplicates, we're going to be talking about the full-fledged and so forth. I did mention as a possibility, it's in the video, you can definitely go look at it, but I think it's important to talk about it from the full perspective. But the reason that it started as a US emphasis was because 100% of the fact that the majority of my audience is US, and that's what they would like to hear about. So I do want to pull up one more page here before we conclude, kind of give some more points here. These are the recent releases, and you're seeing duplicates come throughout, like the United 77, the American MD-80, and these became commonplace throughout these 757s. You have more American MD-80s and 2 United 767s, among with the American MD-80 once again. Pan Am 747 SP was a nice re-release, but it hasn't been done in a while. So Delta 332 was nice. You keep looking through the list, and then you get the like this United Max 9s and Max 8s. We get all the duplicates there. And then we get the Ultimate Collections, the NG Lights, which they are what they are, right? The 2 UPS 747s. It's just a part of their strategy. And the 3 United Max 8s, that was one of those. And obviously it gets better from here after this debacle of the Atlas 747s. And then the Uniteds. This one's a little bit better, but these two particularly, very small details, right? So that certainly comes up there. And then the City of Everett 747 got done twice, on. But if I keep strolling, the main point that I want to illustrate here, and this goes back to the rest of the world, right? The swoops. I mean, why would you do 6 swoop 737 variants? I mean, just doesn't make sense, right? That's very frustrating to the whole world. But if we get back here to 2023, you don't see this. I mean, you just see ones like Mortal Love, Mumo 1, you don't see the duplicates, and then substantial differences, like a whole different livery, right? And Spirit, Air Transit, Copa, Cargo here, Aero Mexico, American 777, Peter Max. You don't see the duplicates. It just doesn't exist back here. So this is the big strategy shift that I've talked about. It certainly skews the numbers when you look at it from the perspective of the actual statistics. So that's why the duplicate numbers need to come into effect to really dive into the detail. This video has been almost 40 minutes, so I don't want to make it too much longer. Richard, if you would like to collaborate, I would 100% like to do so. I really would like to work together on this. I think there's a bunch of perspectives that you bring to the table that are certainly important, but to put a bow on your video, I thought that it was honestly pretty good. There's some really good points here. I do think that the lack of acknowledgement towards talking about the rest of the world is certainly a major missing piece, because I did look at the other portion of the world, and I also mentioned in the video that I made that video with a US emphasis because the majority of my viewership is US based, and that's where that made sense. And I also mentioned the possibility at looking at this from other perspectives, which is certainly what we can do. So I think that's a big part of this, and the comments certainly associate with that. guys, look, there's more to the story than, you know, just the reason that I focused on the US portion is because that is the base of my audience. And obviously the analytics prove the point of that for my channel. That being said, it is interesting to look at this from a global perspective. And I think there's some fault on my side from not acknowledging that, you know, obviously Europe's been drastically under represented, and I did mention that once in the video. And you know, like I said, we are very fortunate as US collectors to have options. That said, we did get really spoiled with really good NG releases and we missed them, so that was a big part of making the video from the perspective that I did. So I certainly am the first to say, especially in the first video, that I could have did better, and I'm certainly here to improve and do better as we move forward. There's certainly many perspectives of this, and then, you know, the tariffs dating back to July. Why not focus on why now and will instead of could and would? They got to focus on now. Black Friday and you know, why would Gemini have not you know, changed their release strategy? You know, all these other companies, right? So there's quite a few arguments we can make. This has been over 40 minutes. I think this summarizes it pretty well. Nevertheless, I hope that you all are able to take some points away from this video. And I apologize to anybody that may think I'm annoying. That is certainly not the intention to do so. But I do think that these, you know, comments, I don't think that they watched the end of my video because I did acknowledge that. And now, Richard, once again, if you'd like to join me, we can certainly do it. I think we need to collaborate and talk about the global impact, because I certainly want my points to be valid, and all the perspectives I can gain is certainly helpful. So feel free to let me know. With that being said, that'll do it for today's video, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. Take it easy, everybody. Stay safe. Trust the process. Do you love and love you do. My name is CM Aviation. I want to thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all soon as CM Aviation is signing off.